someone tell me recently that I really love. She says, for so long we have been celebrating the similarities. She said, I think it's time for us to celebrate the differences too. And I thought that was so powerful. Let's celebrate the differences. Let's not try to make everybody in our image. Let us show what's different about our traditions. And I think that helps us also to get to know each other better.
On In Good Faith, we believe that all faith traditions have something to teach us about how God is working in the world and in our lives. So join us as we listen and learn. Welcome to In Good Faith, and you're listening to part of our mini-series on Atlanta. We had the chance to travel there to attend Interfaith Atlanta and met so many great people. Previously, we've heard from Reverend Gerald Durley and Sherry Frank, both civil rights activists of faith, and we heard from Rabbi Ellen Nemhauser, the president of Interfaith Atlanta. We also heard music from Lapidus and Miles, and interfaith duo, Rabbi Micah Lapidus, who attends the Temple, and Melvin Miles, who attends Ebenezer Baptist, two Atlanta institutions with a long history of collaboration and activism. You can hear those episodes on our website or on Spotify or Apple Podcast if you missed them. Upcoming, we have a book club episode where we'll discuss Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail. But today, we'll be chatting with the leader of a local organization that works to bring people of different faiths together in order to respect the differences. I'm speaking today in good faith with Angela Harrington Rice, the Executive Director of Interfaith Community Initiatives. She worked for 35 years with Atlanta Interfaith Broadcasters, and she holds a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communications and Media Studies from Clark College. Angela Rice, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Look forward to it.
So not too long ago, we were in Atlanta for Interfaith Atlanta and got to meet so many great folks. And some of the folks that we talked to at their booths were part of one of your initiatives. And that got us really interested in speaking with you. Talk to me about Interfaith Community Initiatives. And when did you first become aware of an interfaith community and that there was work to be done?
The television network that I worked in was Atlanta Interfaith Broadcasters. So one of our main objectives was to make sure that media was accessible to all faith groups. And so one of the things that we did, we partnered with people in the community who were doing interfaith work. So there were always people coming through the door from every different faith. So Interfaith Community Initiatives started right after 9/11. And so when ICI started, AIB was a place that they could go to talk about what it is that they were doing, how they were bringing people together, their travels. And so we were offered an interview opportunity to actually travel with this group. And I was a person who traveled with them to Turkey. And that was in 2006, I believe. And so I traveled to Turkey with them, got to know the people who were in leadership on these travel opportunities. We call them pilgrimages because we believe it's a spiritual process, because you're getting to know more about yourself and your relationship with the divine, as well as getting to know other people who are traveling. So in 2006, we go to Turkey. I think it may have been about 26 of us on the trip, and the leadership, it was a Muslim, Christian, and Jewish person. And so they kind of lead the discussions about those different faith traditions. And so it was a glorious trip. Now, I'm going as work, so I'm carrying all this equipment all the time and trying to shoot everything and get interviews and trying to make it to the bus on time with all of this equipment. So they were very wonderful in terms of helping me to load up what I needed to load up so I could take this back to the Atlanta Interfaith Broadcasters and develop a program. In fact, I developed a 2-part documentary that actually won a Southeastern Emmy Award. So that was a real thrill. And I think because I did that work and kind of understood what the organization was about and how they were operating, they started to grow and develop more programs. And I was invited to be on the board of directors. And so I was on the board of directors a number of years before I became the executive director. And I always tell people I'm probably one of the early interfaith activists in Atlanta because I worked in interfaith all of my career.
Interesting. You know, anyone who's even gone on a family vacation knows that travel brings out the best and sometimes the worst in all of us because something will always go wrong or we're just forced to be together longer than we typically would. So my understanding is on these trips, people were assigned roommates of a different faith.
Yes.
Talk to me about why and how that worked.
Because, the pilgrimages are not about the place we go. That's what attracts people. Ooh, it'll be nice to go to Turkey. That attracts them. The other reason why we travel internationally is because we want people to be outside of their normal environment. So 3 things that we do. One is they're the assigned roommates. So generally when we travel internationally, it's usually 10 to 12 days. So you'll have a Jewish roommate, a Christian roommate, a Buddhist roommate, if we're going to a country that's primarily Buddhist. And so we'll have all of those switch up and get to know each other. So the idea is that we're going to get to know each other. So when we're back in Atlanta, we have these connections. We know each other. We understand faith through the eyes of that person instead of someone else telling us what they think this person believes or what this denomination or religion professes. We get to know it intimately through someone who is connected to their tradition. We're not an organization that picks up seekers. We're not looking for seekers. We're looking for people who are very well defined in their spiritual tradition. So we're not about proselytizing or getting anyone to change how they see. We just want to share. The other thing is every day you have to be with another person on the pilgrimage. So that way there may be conversations between men and women when the roommates are always of the same gender. And then the other thing is that we have discussions. We come together and we call it our round table, where we talk about what did we go through, what did we see, what was the interactions, what questions do we have. The interesting thing is I have been on several of the pilgrimages and we have had some challenges. We've had people get hurt, fall. We had to go to the hospital with them. We've had people lose their purses and, have the whole hotel looking for us.
Oh, boy.
We've had conversations that got kind of tense. But one of the things that we have not had is major fallout. We do have some rules about how we handle these things. If someone is having a challenge, then they go to the religious leader who is helping to conduct the pilgrimage. And then they talk. I know once, I wasn't working on this one. I went as just a fellow pilgrim. And I was asked to preach. And so I preached from a scripture that I didn't know had been considered very harmful to Jews. And in this sermon, I talked about how Jesus overcame boundaries. He moved beyond boundaries, things that mostly in that tradition Jews weren't to do. But Jesus did them because he wanted to embrace people from different traditions. I didn't see it as a proselytizing sermon. So what happened is that person spoke to the Jewish leader and the Jewish leader talked to me. We had a conversation and he understood my point of view after that conversation, but it never blew up. But there are challenges and there's a lot of things that we don't know about each other because we're so divided. One of the things, we have to have so many of each faith group that's coming. And then we have to have so many Blacks. We have to have so many women and so many men. It's a lot of work trying to create that dynamic.
Boy, but yes, an opportunity to really learn from each other. And as you said, something you learned about something that you hadn't had any ill intention but could have been misunderstood.
Yes.
Some of the places you've been, South Africa, Vietnam, the country of Jordan, what would make you pick those particular places?
In terms of Jordan, the history, I mean, it's like all of the monotheistic religions are kind of bedded there. I think that was one of the reasons. The South Africa was about reconciliation.
Right.
How do people, after they've gone through this really challenging history, how do they then come together to move forward, to move their country forward? And so that gave us a good opportunity to look at and to speak with people who were part of that movement. It was a glorious trip. I mean, really a glorious trip.
Boy, that whole truth and reconciliation process, that's something that has rarely happened after conflict.
Yes.
And what a lesson.
Vietnam was because of what the Vietnamese call it, their American War. So we wanted to see what Vietnam was like after all of that and how receptive they were to people from the United States. And we can tell you that the country seems to be very healed and moving on. And it was really a great experience. We had with us a Vietnam vet. For him, it was reconnecting with that history and to heal the wounds, because a lot of our vets came back with those wounds and seeing things that, you think about them like 18, 19 years old and seeing these atrocities and being engaged in these atrocities in the name of patriotism in your country. And so he wanted to go back and heal wounds.
How would you say your spiritual life has been influenced by traveling this way with different people, different faiths, and learning from each other?
Well, one of the things is I love people. I don't have any brand of people that I consider unlovable. So I love people. I love having these conversations. And, I've learned so much because now I grew up in a rural community in Georgia in a Baptist church. And so I didn't have much of an understanding of different religions. When you live in small towns, you're kind of cloistered. And so it was wonderful to get to know other people, but also to learn. Like, I didn't know that Muslims believed that Jesus was a prophet and Mary and Moses and everybody else is in the Quran. I didn't know that, So, I mean, it was things that I learned, and it inspired me to actually go to seminary. So that was one of the things, learning more about the Jewish tradition and learning more, knowing that Jesus was a Jew and understanding the Bible in a way from that Jewish tradition and listening to people talk about some of the rituals and some of the celebrations. And so it helped me understand my faith even more.
You mentioned that people really do get to know each other. Then they come back. Then they're still rubbing shoulders in the community. So not only would it help the people who go, but I'm curious what you've seen, because the leaders know each other. What has that done for the community at large?
Well, I think one of the things that's happened in our community is because we had a head start on a lot of things, that we were able to connect during some of the devastations that we've gone through, like COVID, checking on each other. We had an opportunity once. There was a masjid or mosque that was being threatened, and the interfaith community came, and Jews, Christians came and surrounded it. Like, we're standing with you. We've stood with each other during funerals, during weddings. We have celebrated Shabbat. So one of the other things is that wherever we go to a religious service of the people who are traveling as pilgrims. So in Turkey, we went to several mosques, and we also found a Jewish synagogue in Turkey. We met with the head rabbi. We went to an Eastern Orthodox church. So we get to be in the midst of how they worship. And I think that just connects us because we have so much to share when we get back. The other thing that we do is when we come back, we usually get together, share our experiences, share our pictures and all of the things that happened and what we learned. So I think Atlanta is a better city because I see us in a way carrying on the work of Dr. King. He's our number one citizen We believe that we're carrying on this work because it was about us coming together as one, recognizing the humanity in each other, and then to know each other, people from different traditions. It really feels good.
ICI, or the Interfaith Community Initiative, has several programs. You've been talking about World Pilgrims.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's immersions, there's sacred spaces.
Our program, Interfaith Immersions, that's a wonderful program. And it's like, okay, maybe you can't go outside of the country. Maybe that's not something you can do because of economics, because of family, because of work. So we do the same thing in Atlanta. So we get everybody together, usually on a bus, and we take them around to the various religious centers in Atlanta. We have people from those centers, churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, and they tell those who are traveling with us, what they believe. They give us a tour of the building. Sometimes they feed us. And so I think it may have been 2019, we actually took police officers, firemen, and other public safety officers into these various religious worship centers. And so that they got to know people who worship there. They got to know the leaders. They were given a tour of the building. And the interesting thing, they had an incident in Atlanta where the police officers went to a masjid to arrest someone, and it was on a Friday.
The day of prayers there.
Yeah, but they don't know that. They don't know it's a day of prayer. They don't know that they don't sit in chairs. They don't know that they're generally on the floor. They don't know that we're wearing your boots and shoes inside the building. So they disturb this religious service. And so that became an idea of why it was necessary for the people who are supposed to protect us, to know people from different traditions. So they got an opportunity to understand why they take off their shoes in certain places like Hindu temples, Buddhist temples, and the Muslim masjids. And then we took them to synagogue. A lot of them had never been inside a synagogue. And they learned what was important. One of the firemen asked, if this holy place was on fire, what should we save after we save the people? And they said to save the Torah. And then they showed him how to handle the Torah, because the Torah has to be handled in a certain way. And so I thought that was such important information. The Torah is a holy book that they read. They're very expensive. The congregations come together to bring forth the best one that they know. And so to have that information for people who are protecting us and protecting our properties or whatever, I thought was important work.
Boy, what a beautiful tradition. Yeah, to worship with each other, not just to intellectually hear the stories, but to actually participate to whatever degree is appropriate in the building and with the people whose place it is, to know that you're there out of respect.
Yes.
And solidarity with them. Let me just ask, what's your spiritual background?
I grew up in a rural community. And I attended church and joined the church where my ancestors actually formed and built. And so I grew up in the Baptist church. So I was in a Baptist church for most of my years. I am now in an independent unity church, which is a lot more embracing of different paths to God than was the tradition I came from. But I love my Baptist church. I'm still a quasi-member, and I was a church girl, I tell people. I love church. I love Jesus, and I was at church every time it opened. I contributed in so many different ways by being in different committees and teaching Sunday school and doing things like that. So I still connect with my church because it's my family's church. But today I am a assistant minister at Hillside International Truth Center, where I have been for probably nearly 20 25 years.
In those decades since then, as a believer, as a seminarian, as someone who deals with people of different faiths and is hoping for respect, and whatever other life experiences, what has God taught you that you didn't know then that you know now about the divine?
Oh, wow. Well, one of the things that it has taught me that we are more alike than we are different as we continue to travel this journey. Over those years, I've lost so many loved ones. You know, we all go through grief. We all go through pain and suffering. And one of the things that I learned is that maybe the way I do it might not be the best way. I really celebrate the Jewish tradition of Sit and Shiva. I really respect the Muslim way of a very clean burial where, you know, it's not the big casket and, you know, all the things, whatever. I mean, I have glorified in those traditions. And so I have found them somewhat to be much more healing in ways than my Christian path.
That's beautifully said. What in your life right now, what connects you to God? Is it a practice? Is it a prayer? Is it a favorite story or parable or
all that?
All that. Okay. I should have let you make the list.
Prayer, you know. I start my morning with prayer. I read scripture. I read inspirational materials, music, and I love nature. Walking in nature, sitting in nature. Sometimes I take my coloring books to the park and I color in the park and I listen to the birds. And so I'm not much of a TV watcher, so I spend a lot more time reading. And like yesterday, I cooked a really wonderful vegetarian meal and I really resonated with what I was doing. You know, I don't cook that often. My husband made his transition some years ago, and so I'm pretty much single and I'm in the house by myself. We had no children. I'm like thinking, oh, look at this. Look what Earth has given me, you know, and I put it all together. I mean, I think it's about the simple things that we do. Sometimes we think about spirituality and we think about, oh, we got to do all of this. What we have to do is to be grateful in the moment. Recognizing that every moment we have is a gift. The food that we eat is a gift, the things that we do. And so if we start to cherish the moment and not take it for granted. So I was grateful for the mushrooms and the bell peppers and the hot peppers and onions and the salad. I don't know. I just kind of stay in that moment. Not that I don't have downtime when I might not be as gleeful, but I'm always grateful. And I always carry joy in my heart.
Well, I was thinking at how much I wished I could hear you preach. Now I want to go to dinner after the service with you, so and have you cook. So, okay. Hey, here's a question for you. Last question. Thanks for your time this morning.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite hymn?
Oh, I do. I do.
Can you tell me about that?
Ooh, great is thy faithfulness. Great. Oh, I love that hymn. Yes. I've already done my eulogy, and so that's the song that I want to sing. Great is thy faithfulness.
And it's a great old hymn. Great old
Isn't
hymn.
it? I love hymns, and I hate when they take them out. You know, churches sometimes don't do hymns. I want a hymn Sunday. Just sing hymns. There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place. And I know it is the presence of the Lord. I love that one too. So.
You know, Atlanta, as you said, has been known as an important place in American civil rights. And so this seems to be, in a lot of ways, a continuation of that mission.
I think so. I really do. I really do, because someone told me recently that I really love, she says, for so long we have been celebrating the similarities. She said, I think it's time for us to celebrate the differences too. And I thought that was so powerful. Let's celebrate the differences. Let's not try to make everybody in our image or try to bring us all to this place. let us show what's different about our traditions. And I think that helps us also to get to know each other better. And when we can respect that difference, I think that's when we're moving ahead.
Amen.
Yes. What I think is interfaith is a way of life. It's not just for a trip. It's not just for an event. It's the way you live your life. And that's appreciating other people where they are, being willing to speak up when you hear someone disparaging other people of different faiths, being willing to go outside of your comfort zone into other spaces, being able to raise your hand and defend. I've heard so many negative things about people in terms of talking about other faiths. And I'll stop them and I'll say, well, let's talk about it this way. Or can you think about it this way? But just being willing to be there, particularly when you're from a group that's been vilified, it's nice to know that you got a friend.
Many thanks to Angela Rice for speaking with us. This episode was produced by Heather Bigley. Our production team includes Aaliyah Ebert, Katarina Martinich, and James Sturdivant. Our post-production sound designers are Ashton Parkinson and Lauren Sandberg. In Good Faith is committed to the idea that we all benefit from hearing people of widely varying backgrounds share their personal experience with faith and belief. In fact, we think people with such experience deserve some of our best listening. Have you shared one of these episodes with a friend? I hope you will. And I hope you will leave a review at Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get our podcasts. That really does help spread the word. In Good Faith is a production of BYU Radio. I'm Stephen Cap Perry. I hope you'll join us again soon, right here in Good Faith. I'm Stephen Cap Perry, host of In Good Faith. We have another podcast in our BYU Radio family of podcasts. It's called The Appleseed. It's a way to take a journey anytime you would like with stories, nationally known storytellers telling everything from folk tales and fairy tales, personal stories, and family tales. It's a great way to get everybody laughing or thinking about some particular topic, and it almost always leads to conversations in the family. If you hit pause after a story and say, what did you think about that? And boy, what does that remind you of? That is a fun time to get to share each other's stories, and that's what The Appleseed does. Check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts.